Tonight, we enter the shadows of feudal Japan as we stealthily traverse the dangerous world of Tenchu. If you find that these deadly tales resonate with your inner shinobi, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing for more content like this. It helps ensure that Rikimaru and Ayame can continue their shadowy adventures while shining some light on this small channel. But for now, sip some herbal tea and get cozy as we embark on another deadly mission into the world of Tenchu. Moonlight cast long shadows across Goda Castle's inner chambers as Rikimaru knelt silently in the darkness. His breath, controlled and measured, made no sound as he maintained his vigil outside his lord's private quarters. Something wasn't right. The night air carried an unusual chill, one that spoke not of winter's approach, but of malevolent intent. 3 days had passed since the Azuma ninja had intercepted a coded message speaking of the Lord's final night. While others dismissed it as the ramblings of disgruntled peasants, Rikimaru knew better. 15 years of service as Lord Goda's shadow had honed his instincts to a lethal edge. A subtle disturbance in the air, barely perceptible, caused Rikimaru to tense. His hand moved to Izayoi, the blade that had tasted the blood of countless enemies, the sword that had pierced Onikage's heart 1 year ago in the Demon's Keep. The shoji screen across the courtyard slid open without a sound. Had Rikimaru not been watching for it, he would have missed the movement entirely. A figure, darker than the night itself, slipped inside. Too skilled for a common assassin, he thought, drawing his blade in one fluid motion as he moved like smoke across the courtyard. Inside Lord Goda's chamber, the daimyo slept peacefully, unaware of the shadow that crept toward his bed. The assassin moved with unnatural grace, each step placed with inhuman precision. As the intruder raised a curved blade that gleamed with an eerie blue light, Rikimaru struck. Izayoi sliced through the air, but the assassin sensed his presence at the last moment. With impossible speed, the killer twisted away, the sacred blade cutting only cloth instead of flesh. Lord Goda woke with a start. What treachery is this? The assassin's face remained hidden behind a black mask, but Rikimaru could see the eyes, yellow with vertical pupils that glowed in the darkness. Protect Lord Goda, Rikimaru commanded the guards who now rushed into the room. He launched himself at the assassin, Izayoi singing through the air. Their blades met with a sound like shattering ice. The impact sent a painful vibration through Rikimaru's arm. The assassin's strength was monstrous. The master sends his regards, Dragon of the Azuma, the assassin hissed, voice distorted and hollow. Onikage's grudge transcends death. Rikimaru's blood ran cold. Onikage is dead. I killed him myself. The assassin laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. Nothing truly dies in the shadow realm. With unexpected swiftness, the assassin hurled something to the floor. A blinding flash illuminated the room, followed by acrid smoke that burned Rikimaru's lungs. By the time his vision cleared, the intruder had vanished. At the window, a small scroll had been pinned to the wooden frame with a throwing knife. Rikimaru approached cautiously, unrolling the parchment with the tip of his sword. Written in blood were 4 characters. The sleeping dragon awakens. Lord Goda approached, his face grim in the torchlight. What does this mean? It means Onikage's shadow still darkens our path, Rikimaru replied, his voice tight. But there's more. The assassin's blade. It bore markings I've seen before, in Minister Hamada's private collection. Hamada? He has been a trusted advisor for years. Even the sturdiest tree may harbor rot within, Rikimaru said. I must investigate further. Lord Goda nodded gravely. Do what you must, but work from the shadows. If Hamada is indeed involved, he must not suspect our knowledge. There is one more thing, my lord, Rikimaru added, kneeling to examine a fine black powder on the floor where the assassin had stood. The substance had an unnatural blue sheen. This is not the work of mere men. There are traces of dark magic at play. Then we shall need both you and Ayami. She has been watching the merchant district where rumors speak of strange shipments arriving under cover of night. Rikimaru nodded. I will find her at dawn. Until then, double your guards and trust no one outside this room. As Rikimaru disappeared into the night, Lord Goda looked down at the threatening message, his hand tightening around the parchment. After all these years of peace, he whispered to himself, the shadows return to claim their due. Little did he know that this was merely the first ripple in a rising tide of darkness that threatened to engulf his entire domain. Ayami moved like a spring breeze through the crowded Echigoya district, her jewel blades concealed beneath the simple blue kimono she wore. Unlike Rikimaru's preference for midnight operations, she found daylight offered its own kind of shadows. The chaos of crowded streets, the distraction of merchants hawking their wares, the perfect anonymity of being just another face in the throng. 3 days of watching the merchant guild had yielded little until this morning, when she'd spotted Minister Hamada's personal guard escorting a covered palanquin to a nondescript warehouse. For a man who claims to despise the merchant class, Hamada certainly keeps interesting company, she muttered, slipping between 2 argumentative fish vendors. The warehouse stood apart from others, its windows covered with heavy paper screens. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their armor bearing Hamada's crest, a serpent coiled around a sword. Ayame approached from the rear, scaling the adjacent building with practiced ease. A small gap in the roof tiles provided both entry and a view of the warehouse interior. Below, Minister Hamada's distinctive voice echoed against the wooden walls. The shipment from the southern islands must arrive without scrutiny. Lord Goda's men are growing suspicious. A second voice answered, female, with an accent Ayame couldn't place. The Lord's suspicions are the least of your concerns, Minister. Lady Kagami grows impatient with delays. Ayame stiffened. Lady Kagami, the sorceress who had once served Tenrai before his defeat. She was supposed to have perished when Tenrai's fortress collapsed. I have upheld my end of our arrangement, Hamada insisted, fear evident in his voice. The tax records have been altered. The gold flows to your mistress as agreed. Gold is merely metal, Minister. Lady Kagami requires the artifacts. Without them, the ritual cannot proceed. Ayame shifted position to get a better view. Below, a woman dressed in unusual garments stood before a kneeling Hamada. Her face was painted white with red markings around her eyes, the distinctive appearance of Lady Kagami's acolytes. The artifacts arrived tonight, Hamada said. But the attempt on Lord Goda failed. The white-haired demon of the Azuma clan interfered. The woman's laugh was cold as winter rain. Rikimaru's intervention was anticipated. Lady Kagami has prepared for the dragon of the Azuma. She reached into her robes and withdrew a small cloth bundle, which she handed to Hamada. When the moon reaches its zenith tonight, burn this at the castle's eastern gate. It will ensure the guard changes are delayed. Ayame had seen enough. She needed to warn Rikimaru and Lord Goda. However, as she prepared to retreat, her foot dislodged a loose tile. The sound was slight, but in the quiet warehouse, it may as well have been a temple bell. "We have uninvited ears," the woman hissed, her head snapping up toward the roof. Ayame cursed under her breath and rolled away from the opening just as a throwing knife embedded itself next to her. The blade sizzled with an unnatural green flame that melted the surrounding tiles. Guards shouted below as Ayame sprinted across the rooftop. Two of Hamada's men had already scaled the adjacent building and were in pursuit. Ordinary guards she could handle, but if the woman below was truly one of Lady Kagami's disciples, this situation had become far more dangerous. Ayame leapt across an alleyway to the next building, her mind racing. Lady Kagami alive and conspiring with Minister Hamada? Artifacts and rituals? This was no simple political treachery. A throwing star whizzed past her ear, drawing blood. Ayame spun and flung one of her kunai in response. The blade found its mark in a guard's throat, sending him tumbling from the roof. "So much for stealth," she muttered, drawing her twin blades as three more guards appeared ahead, cutting off her escape route. With practiced precision, Ayame engaged the guards. Her blades danced in the sunlight, drawing crimson arcs through the air. Two fell quickly, but the third proved more skilled than his companions. "You fight well for one of Hamada's dogs," Ayame taunted, parrying a thrust aimed at her abdomen. The guard smiled coldly. "I serve a greater master than Hamada." For a brief moment, his eyes flashed an unnatural yellow. Ayame felt a chill run down her spine as the guard's movements became inhumanly fast. She barely blocked a strike that would have separated her head from her shoulders. The impact numbed her arm and sent one of her blades skittering across the tiles. In desperation, Ayame reached for the smoke bomb at her waist and hurled it at the guard's feet. The explosion of black smoke provided the moment she needed. Instead of retreating, she launched herself directly at her opponent, her remaining blade finding the gap in his armor at the throat. As he fell, his body began to dissolve into black powder, gleaming with an eerie blue sheen. "Onikage's sorcery," Ayame whispered, recognizing the signature of their old nemesis. She retrieved her fallen blade and quickly searched the dissolving corpse. Inside a hidden pocket, she found a small scroll bearing Minister Hamada's seal. Breaking it open, she found a list of names, castle guards, servants, and even one of Lord Goda's advisors, each marked with strange symbols. A list of conspirators or targets. Shouts from below indicated more guards were coming. Ayami tucked the scroll into her pocket and fled across the rooftops toward Goda Castle. Whatever darkness was gathering, it centered around Minister Hamada, Lady Kagami, and the phantom of their old enemy, Onikage. As she ran, a cold certainty settled in her heart. The peace they had fought so hard to achieve was about to shatter. Dawn painted the eastern sky in hues of blood and fire as Rikimaru made his way up the winding path to Shiunsai Shrine. The ancient stone steps, worn by centuries of pilgrims' feet, led to a sacred place where the veil between worlds grew thin. If Onikage's influence was indeed reaching from beyond death, this shrine, dedicated to the boundary between living and dead, would bear signs of the disturbance. The forest surrounding the shrine path had grown unnaturally silent. No birds called, no insects hummed. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir the leaves. Rikimaru's hand rested on his sword, senses alert to the weighted stillness. "You feel it too," came a voice from the shadows of a massive cedar. Rikimaru didn't turn. "Teshu, I thought you had returned to your practice in the capital." The physician by day, assassin by night, emerged from behind the tree, medical bag slung over one shoulder. His weighted hand claw, the deadly Takagi, glinted from beneath his sleeve. "A doctor goes where sickness spreads," he replied, falling into step beside Rikimaru. "And something is very sick in Lord Goda's realm. 3 villagers dead in the past week, their bodies drained of blood and marked with symbols I've not seen since Tenrai's cult was destroyed." "Lady Kagami's work," Rikimaru said. "Ayame is investigating a connection to Minister Hamada." Teshu's expression darkened. "Then our paths converge. One of the dead was a guard in Hamada's household. Before he died, he sought treatment for recurring nightmares. He claimed to see a man with a demon's face standing at the foot of his bed each night, a man he had helped entomb months ago." They reached the shrine's torii gate, and both men stopped. Beyond the vermilion archway, the shrine grounds appeared normal to casual observation. Stone lanterns lining the approach, the small offering hall, the main sanctuary rising behind it. Yet to Rikimaru's trained eye, subtle wrongness permeated everything. The sacred rope hanging across the sanctuary entrance was frayed in an unnatural pattern. The water in the purification font rippled, absent breeze. The stone guardian dogs flanking the steps seemed to have shifted position slightly, their snarling faces now directed inward toward the shrine rather than outward to ward off evil. "Something has corrupted this place," Rikimaru murmured. As if in response, a low humming began to emanate from the sanctuary. It grew in intensity, vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. "The shrine maiden," Tenchu said suddenly. "Where is she?" Rikimaru scanned the grounds. The elderly woman who had tended this shrine for decades should have emerged at their arrival. Her absence spoke volumes. Drawing Izayoi, Rikimaru approached the sanctuary. The sacred blade glowed faintly in response to the spiritual disturbance. With a nod to Tenchu, who readied his Takagi, Rikimaru slid open the sanctuary door. The smell hit them first, copper and rot. The shrine maiden lay sprawled before the altar, her white robes stained crimson. Around her body, black candles formed a perfect circle, their flames burning an unnatural purple. 3 days dead, Tenchu said after a brief examination. Her heart was removed while she still lived. Behind the altar, where the shrine's sacred mirror normally stood, someone had mounted a different reflective surface, a polished black obsidian disc inscribed with characters that seemed to shift and move when viewed directly. "A seeing stone," Rikimaru said grimly. "Onikage used one to communicate with Tenrai from the Shadow Realm." He approached carefully, sword raised defensively. The surface of the obsidian began to swirl like black water, and a voice emanated from its depths, familiar, hated, impossible. "The dragon returns to my web." Onikage's distinctive rasp echoed through the sanctuary. "How fitting that you seek me in a house of spirits, Rikimaru." The obsidian surface cleared to reveal Onikage's face, the same demonic visage that had haunted Rikimaru's dreams for years. The face of the demon who had murdered his master, Shiunsai, whose name this desecrated shrine bore. "You died by my blade," Rikimaru stated, his voice cold and controlled despite the rage building within him. Onikage's laugh reverberated from the stone. "Death is merely a doorway, dragon of the Azuma. You sent me through it, but Lady Kagami has provided the key to my return. Whatever ritual you and the sorceress plan, it ends here." Rikimaru raised Izayoi, preparing to shatter the obsidian. "Strike the messenger if you wish," Onikage taunted. "It changes nothing. Even now, Lady Kagami prepares the vessel. Royal blood will open the gate, and I shall walk again in the realm of flesh." Royal blood. The words struck Rikimaru like a physical blow. "Princess Kiku," he breathed. "The princess is well guarded," Tenchu said, stepping forward. "Your servants cannot reach her." Onikage's expression shifted to one of malicious delight. "My servants are already within your precious castle walls. They have worn the faces of Goda's loyal subjects for months. The princess's personal guard, her handmaidens, even her beloved tutor." "You lie," Rikimaru said, but doubt had taken root. "Ask yourself, dragon, when did you last set eyes upon the princess? When did Lord Goda himself last speak with his daughter directly, rather than through her attendants?" Cold realization washed over Rikimaru. It had been nearly a week since he'd seen Princess Kiku in the castle gardens. Lord Goda had mentioned that she was indisposed with a seasonal illness, being tended by her ladies and the court physician. "The physician," Tenchu muttered. "I was called to consult on a strange malady affecting one of the castle guards. When I arrived, the court physician turned me away, claiming the situation was under control. Tonight, when the blood moon rises, Onikage continued, savoring their dismay, the princess will fulfill her purpose. Lady Kagami will open the gateway, and I shall return. Hamada will be rewarded with the lordship he craves, and Goda's line will end, as will the Azuma clan. Rikimaru's control broke. With a shout of rage, he brought his sword down upon the obsidian disc. The sacred blade shattered the stone, sending black fragments flying across the sanctuary. Onikage's laughter continued to echo even as the pieces settled. "We must return to the castle immediately," Rikimaru said, sheathing his blade. "Wait." Tenchu knelt beside the shrine maiden's body. There's something clutched in her hand. Carefully, he pried open the dead woman's fingers. Within her grasp was a small jade figurine. A dragon curled protectively around a temple. The temple of the sleeping dragon. Rikimaru recognized the distinctive architecture depicted in the carving. It lies abandoned in the northern mountains. Not abandoned any longer, it seems, Tenchu replied. This was a message she died trying to deliver. Rikimaru took the jade piece, studying it intently. The temple housed ancient texts on barrier magic and realm separation. If Lady Kagami plans to open a gateway for Onikage's return, then the ritual components would be described in those texts, Tenchu finished, including how to prepare the sacrifice. A distant rumble of thunder punctuated their realization. Storm clouds had gathered with unnatural speed, circling above the shrine like vultures. "Time grows short," Rikimaru said, pocketing the jade figurine. "I must find Ayame and warn Lord Goda. Can you reach the temple and discover what ritual they plan?" Tenchu nodded. "The northern pass will be watched. I'll take the old smuggler's route through the mountain caves." As they exited the defiled shrine, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, black as ink against the stone path. Where they touched Rikimaru's skin, they burned like embers. "Corruption falls from the very sky," Tenchu observed grimly. "Onikage's influence grows stronger by the hour." Rikimaru gazed toward Goda Castle, barely visible in the distance through the gathering storm. "Then we have until nightfall to stop what has been set in motion. After that," he left the thought unfinished, but both men understood. After nightfall, they would face either victory or the end of everything they had fought to protect. Twilight shrouded Minister Hamada's estate in long shadows as Ayame crouched on the rooftop of a nearby bathhouse. Steam billowed around her, providing additional cover as she studied the compound's defenses. After sharing her discoveries with Rikimaru at their rendezvous point, they had agreed to divide their efforts. He would return to warn Lord Goda and verify Princess Kiku's safety, while she would infiltrate Hamada's estate to find concrete evidence of his treachery. 12 guards on rotation, Ayame counted silently. The security was excessive for a minister, even one as wealthy and paranoid as Hamada. More telling was the presence of 4 figures in dark blue robes who stood motionless at each corner of the compound. Lady Kagami's acolytes, recognizable by their distinctive face paint and the ceremonial daggers at their waists. "The minister keeps interesting company for a man who publicly denounces sorcery," Ayame murmured, recalling Hamada's passionate speeches against superstitious practices in Lord Goda's court. She waited as the guard patrol passed beneath her position, then dropped silently onto the estate wall. The stone was strangely cold beneath her hands, radiating a chill that penetrated her gloves. Moving like a shadow, she made her way toward the main house, avoiding the pools of light cast by paper lanterns. A servant emerged from a side door, carrying a tray of food toward what appeared to be a storehouse at the rear of the property. Ayami followed, keeping to the shadows of ornamental pines that lined the garden path. The servant placed the tray before the storehouse door and knocked 3 times, then twice more. A small viewing panel slid open, eyes gleaming in the darkness beyond. Words were exchanged too quietly for her to hear. Then the door opened just wide enough to admit the tray before slamming shut. Prisoners? Ayame wondered. Or something Hamada doesn't want his household to see. Once the servant had returned to the main house, Ayame approached the storehouse. The building had been reinforced, its wooden walls overlaid with metal plating, its windows sealed with the same material. No ordinary storehouse would require such measures. The lock on the door was complex, but nothing her picks couldn't handle. Within moments, the mechanism unlocked with a click, and she eased the door open just enough to slip inside. The interior was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, its light revealing rows of shelves filled with artifacts, ancient scrolls, ceremonial weapons, containers of powders and liquids, and most disturbing of all, human remains, fingers, eyes, and other parts preserved in glass jars. Lady Kagami's collection, she realized, recognizing the components for blood sorcery that the sorceress favored. At the far end of the storehouse, a heavy curtain covered what appeared to be a doorway. Carefully stepping around the shelves, Ayami approached and gently pulled the fabric aside. Beyond lay a small chamber dominated by a stone altar. Upon it rested a life-sized doll crafted to resemble Princess Kiku in perfect detail. From her long black hair to the birthmark on her left wrist. The doll wore robes of white silk, identical to ceremonial garments worn by the imperial family. Its eyes were painted closed, as if in peaceful sleep. A proxy for the ritual, Ayami whispered, her blood running cold. She had seen such dolls used in sympathetic magic before. What was done to the doll would affect the real princess, creating a connection that could be exploited for the actual ceremony. Surrounding the altar were 5 black candles arranged in a star pattern. 3 had burned completely, 1 was halfway consumed, and the 5th remained unlit. A small knife with a jade handle lay beside the doll, its blade stained with what appeared to be fresh blood. Ayame carefully examined the chamber for any additional clues. On the wall hung a map of Lord Goda's province with 5 locations marked in red, 3 crossed out, including the Shionsai shrine where Rikimaru had gone. The 4th mark indicated a location within Goda Castle itself, while the 5th pointed to the Temple of the Sleeping Dragon in the northern mountains. The ritual sites, Ayame realized, They're creating a massive channeling formation with the castle at its center. A leather-bound book lay open on a small table beside the altar. The text was written in an ancient script that Ayame recognized as the same used in Tenrai's fortress. Though she couldn't read most of it, certain phrases stood out. Royal vessel, blood moon gate, and most concerning, the demon's return. She was about to examine the book more closely when voices approached from outside. Quickly, Ayame slipped behind a large cabinet as the storehouse door opened. Minister Hamada entered, accompanied by a woman whose elaborate robes and distinctive white-painted face with red markings identified her unmistakably as Lady Kagami herself. "The preparations proceed as planned, Minister," Lady Kagami said, her voice melodious, yet underlaid with something inhuman. "Tonight's blood moon will provide the power necessary for the final step." Hamada appeared nervous, constantly wiping sweat from his brow, despite the chamber's chill. "And Lord Goda? My men report that Rikimaru has returned to the castle. If he warns the Lord—" "It matters not," Lady Kagami interrupted, approaching the altar. "The connection is established. The princess's essence flows into our vessel. Even now, she weakens as our proxy grows stronger." The sorceress lifted the doll, cradling it with disturbing tenderness. "For 3 nights, her blood has fed our cause. Tonight, when the moon reaches its zenith, the final candle will be lit, and her life force will open the gate. And Onikage will honor our arrangement?" Hamada asked. "I will have control of the province once Goda is eliminated." Lady Kagami's laugh sent shivers down Ayame's spine. "You will have what you deserve, Minister, as will we all." She placed the doll back on the altar and reached for the unlit candle. "It is time to begin the final phase. Light the signal fire on the eastern hill. Our agents within the castle will ensure the princess is moved to the ritual chamber." Hamada bowed deeply. "It shall be done, my lady." As they turned to leave, Lady Kagami paused, her head tilting slightly. "We are not alone, Minister." Ayame tensed, her hand moving to her blades. The sorceress turned, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Azuma ninja, you conceal yourself well, but your breath betrays you. The chill of our artifacts affects even the most disciplined warrior." With inhuman speed, Lady Kagami flung her hand toward Ayame's hiding place. A blast of energy struck the cabinet, shattering it to splinters. Ayame rolled clear, drawing her twin blades as she came to her feet. "Your ritual ends here." Minister Hamada had drawn a sword, a blade she recognized as one of the cursed weapons from Tenrai's armory. "Kill her," he shouted to his guards. Lady Kagami made a dismissive gesture. "Your men would only interfere, Minister. This one is mine." The sorceress raised her hands, dark energy crackling between her fingers. "How fitting that an Azuma should witness our triumph. Your blood will strengthen the connection." Ayame dodged as a bolt of dark lightning struck where she had stood, the floor blackening and cracking from its touch. "Your master died by our blades," she taunted, circling to keep both opponents in view. "Onikage, will join him in oblivion. Onikage cannot die, Lady Kagami hissed, her beautiful face contorting with rage. He exists between realms now, beyond your mortal constraints. Tonight, he returns to claim what is his. She launched another attack, this one catching Ayame's sleeve and sending numbing cold up her arm. The kunoichi countered by flinging 3 shuriken in rapid succession. 2 missed as the sorceress moved with unnatural speed, but the third embedded itself in her shoulder. Lady Kagami didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled the throwing star from her flesh, revealing bloodless grey tissue beneath her robes. "My body died serving Tenrai," she said, smiling at Ayame's shock. "What stands before you is merely a vessel sustained by Onikage's power." While Ayame focused on the sorceress, Hamada circled behind her, sword raised. Sensing his movement, Ayame dropped and swept her leg in a wide arc, catching the minister's ankles and sending him crashing into a shelf of artifacts. Glass shattered, releasing noxious fumes that filled the chamber. Using the distraction, Ayame leapt toward the altar and grabbed the princess's proxy doll. "No!" Lady Kagami hissed, lunging forward. Ayame slashed with her blade, catching the sorceress across the face. The cut revealed not blood, but a black substance that writhed like living shadow. With the doll tucked securely in her sash, Ayame threw her last smoke bomb at her feet. The explosion filled the chamber with thick black smoke, providing cover for her escape through a small window near the ceiling. Outside, alarm bells began to ring as Ayame sprinted across the compound's garden. Guards converged from all directions, their swords drawn. The acolytes at the perimeter had begun chanting, their voices raising a barrier of shimmering energy around the estate's boundaries. She reached the wall just as the barrier began to solidify. With one last desperate leap, she hurled herself through the narrowing gap, feeling the energy sear her skin as she passed through. Landing hard on the street beyond, Ayame clutched the doll protectively as she regained her feet. Behind her, Lady Kagami's enraged scream rose above the clamor of the alarm bells, a sound not fully human. "I must reach Rikimaru," Ayame gasped, the cold weight of the doll against her side serving as a constant reminder of what was at stake. Princess Kiku's life force was being drained even now, feeding the ritual that would bring Onikage back into the world of the living. As she disappeared into the shadows of Goda City's back alleys, storm clouds gathered overhead, unnatural in their perfect circular formation above Goda Castle. The blood moon ritual had begun, and time was running out. Thunder rolled across Goda Castle as Rikimaru knelt before Lord Goda in the private audience chamber. Rain lashed against the paper screens, the droplets black as night against the rice paper. 6 of Lord Goda's most trusted guards stood at attention along the walls, their faces grim in the lantern light. "This cannot be," Lord Goda whispered, his face ashen after hearing Rikimaru's report. "Princess Kiku has been ill, yes, but her handmaidens report improvement daily." "When did you last see the princess yourself, my lord?" Rikimaru asked, his voice respectful but urgent. Lord Goda's brow furrowed. "Nearly a week." The court physician advised against visitors to prevent the spread of her illness. "I must see her immediately," Rikimaru insisted, "if what Onikage claimed is true." A commotion outside interrupted him. The door slid open to reveal Sakiya, Lord Goda's elderly advisor, his typically calm demeanor replaced by obvious distress. "My lord," Sakiya bowed hastily. "Forgive the interruption, but Princess Kiku's condition has worsened suddenly. The physician requests your presence." Lord Goda rose immediately. "Take me to her." Rikimaru's hand moved to Izayoi's hilt. Something in Sekiya's manner raised his suspicions. A subtle shift in the advisor's typically measured speech. A feverish gleam in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "My lord," Rikimaru said quietly, "allow me to accompany you." "Of course." Lord Goda nodded. As they moved through the castle corridors, Rikimaru noted with growing unease that the guards they passed seemed oddly vacant, their eyes unfocused. The servants they encountered moved with mechanical precision, their faces expressionless. They reached the eastern wing where Princess Kiku's chambers were located. "How is my daughter?" Lord Goda demanded. "The fever reaches its crisis, my lord," one handmaiden replied without raising her eyes. "The physician attends her within." Sakiya stepped forward. "My lord, the physician requested that only you enter. Too many visitors will tax the princess's strength." Lord Goda nodded and moved toward the door. Rikimaru stepped forward as well, but Sakiya placed himself in the ninja's path. "The physician was most insistent," Sakiya said, his voice hardening. "Only Lord Goda." Rikimaru met the advisor's gaze directly. "I go where my lord goes." Something flickered behind Sakiya's eyes, a yellow gleam that vanished so quickly Rikimaru might have imagined it. The advisor's hand moved to his waist, where a ceremonial dagger hung. Lord Goda, focused entirely on his daughter's condition, had already entered the chamber. The door began to slide closed behind him. In that instant, Rikimaru made his decision. Drawing Izayoi in a flash of steel, he struck Sakiya with the hilt, sending the advisor crashing to the floor. The handmaidens moved with startling speed, drawing concealed weapons from their robes. "My lord," Rikimaru warned, kicking the door fully open as he parried a strike from the nearest false handmaiden. The scene within the princess's chamber froze Rikimaru's blood. Princess Kiku lay upon the bed, her skin pale as death. Dark circles beneath her closed eyes. Standing over her was not the court physician, but a blue-robed acolyte of Lady Kagami, a ceremonial dagger raised above the princess's heart. Lord Goda stood transfixed just inside the doorway, his body rigid, eyes wide with horror, yet unable to move, caught in some sorcerous paralysis. "The dragon arrives," the acolyte said, lowering the dagger slightly. "Lady Kagami foresaw your interference." Behind Rikimaru, the false handmaidens had revealed their true nature, their faces dissolving into featureless black masks. "Release the princess and Lord Goda," Rikimaru commanded, Izayoi glowing with spiritual energy in his grip. The acolyte smiled coldly, You mistake your position, Azuma dog. The ritual has already begun. The princess's life force feeds our master's return even now. As if to emphasize this point, Princess Kiku's body suddenly arched in pain, a soft cry escaping her lips, though she remained unconscious. Simultaneously, the strange black rain outside intensified, beating against the screens like desperate fists. Your master died by my blade once, Rikimaru said, shifting into an attack stance. He will not return while I draw breath. Then your breath shall cease, the acolyte hissed, making a sharp gesture. The false handmaidens attacked in unison, their movements unnaturally coordinated. Rikimaru met their assault with cold precision, blade cutting through the first attacker with a spray of that same black powder he had encountered before. The second lunged low, aiming for his legs, but Rikimaru leapt over the strike and brought his heel down on the creature's spine with a sickening crack. The third handmaiden proved more challenging, wielding twin daggers with expert skill. As they fought, he noted that Lord Goda remained paralyzed, while the acolyte had begun a low chant over Princess Kiku, the ceremonial dagger now tracing symbols in the air above her body. With a desperate surge, Rikimaru disengaged from his opponent and hurled a kunai at the acolyte. The throwing blade struck true, embedding itself in the sorcerer's neck. The chanting stopped with a wet gurgle, but the acolyte merely smiled, black ichor seeping from the wound instead of blood. Too late, the dying acolyte rasped. The vessel awakens. Outside, the storm reached a crescendo, and a blood-red moonbeam pierced through the black clouds, shining directly through the chamber's window to illuminate Princess Kiku. Her body rose several inches above the bed, suspended by unseen forces. The remaining false handmaiden used his momentary distraction to strike, her blade slicing across his back. Pain flared, but Rikimaru had endured worse. Spinning with the blow's momentum, he brought Izayoi around in a deadly arc that separated the creature's head from its shoulders. As the body collapsed into black dust, Rikimaru rushed to Princess Kiku's side. Her skin had begun to glow with an unnatural red light that pulsed in rhythm with the storm outside. "What have they done to you?" he whispered, reaching for her. A barrier of energy repelled his hand, burning his flesh. "She becomes the gate," he wheezed. "Her royal blood, her innocent soul, the perfect vessel for our master's return." Lord Goda suddenly gasped, the paralysis spell broken with the acolyte's failing strength. He stumbled forward, reaching for his daughter. "No, my lord," Rikimaru warned, but too late. When Lord Goda touched the barrier surrounding his daughter, the energy flared blindingly. Both men were thrown backward against the wall. As Rikimaru regained his feet, he saw that the ritual had accelerated. Princess Kiku's body now hovered higher above the bed, her hair streaming upward as if underwater, her skin translucent enough to reveal the network of veins beneath, all pulsing with that same red light. The dying acolyte had begun laughing, the sound gurgling through the blood filling his lungs. "The temple activates," he gasped. "The stars align. The blood moon rises. Lady Kagami opens the way, and Onikage returns." With a final surge of strength, Rikimaru drove Izayoi through the man's heart, ending his maddened proclamations. The body dissolved entirely, leaving only black dust and empty robes. "We must move the princess from this chamber," Rikimaru said, helping Lord Goda to his feet. "The ritual is connected to specific locations. If we can break the alignment..." "Rikimaru," a new voice interrupted, familiar and welcome. Ayame appeared in the doorway, breathing hard, her clothing torn and singed in places. In her arms, she carried what appeared to be a doll, an exact replica of Princess Kiku. "The proxy," Ayame explained quickly, holding up the doll. "They've been using it to channel the princess's life force. I took it from Hamada's compound." Hope flared in Rikimaru's chest. "Can we use it to break the connection?" "Perhaps," Ayame said, approaching the floating princess. "But we need to act quickly. Lady Kagami has already begun the final phase at the Temple of the Sleeping Dragon." Outside, the blood moon had fully emerged from the storm clouds, its crimson light bathing the castle in an otherworldly glow. The black rain had stopped, replaced by an unnatural stillness. Lord Goda looked from his daughter to the ninja who had served him faithfully for so many years. "Save her," he pleaded. "Whatever the cost, save my daughter." Rikimaru nodded grimly. "Ayame, stay with Lord Goda and the princess. Try to disrupt the connection using the proxy. I must go to the temple and stop Lady Kagami before the gateway fully opens." "Teshu may already be there," Ayame reminded him. "You said he took the mountain path hours ago." "Then I pray we are not too late," Rikimaru replied, moving toward the window. "If I have not returned by dawn." He left the sentence unfinished, but Ayame understood. If they failed to stop the ritual, there would be no dawn, not for any of them. As the white-haired ninja disappeared into the night, Ayame turned her attention to the doll in her hands and the floating princess before her. Somewhere in the castle, a bell began to toll, though no human hand pulled its rope. 12 sonorous rings that echoed across the province like a death knell. The hour of the blood moon had arrived. The princess's chamber had become a battlefield of wills. Ayame knelt beside the floating form of Kiku, the proxy doll placed on the floor between them. Lord Goda stood nearby, his face etched with the agony of a father watching his child suffer while powerless to help. "There must be something we can do," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Ayame studied the red energy barrier surrounding the princess. It pulsed in perfect synchronization with the doll, confirming her suspicion that the two were connected by more than mere appearance. "The ritual works by creating a sympathetic link," she explained, recalling lessons from her training. "What affects the doll affects the princess. Lady Kagami has been drawing the princess's life force through this connection." "Then destroy the doll," Lord Goda urged. "No," Ayame countered sharply. "That might kill her instantly. The connection works both ways. Harm to the proxy transfers to the original." She examined the doll more closely. 5 small crystals had been sewn into it. 1 at the forehead, 2 at the hands, and 2 at the feet, each pulsed with the same red light that surrounded Kiku. "The anchor points," she murmured. "They must be severed carefully, one by one." Drawing one of her smaller blades, Ayami prepared to extract the first crystal from the doll's forehead. Her hand hovered, hesitating. If she made a mistake, the backlash could kill the princess instantly. "Wait!" came a voice from the doorway. "You'll need this." Sekiya stood there, blood trickling from where Rikimaru had struck him earlier. In his trembling hand, he held a small vial of clear liquid. Ayami was on her feet in an instant, blade ready. "Stay back, traitor." Lord Goda looked shocked. "Sekiya, my most trusted advisor?" The elderly man's face contorted with anguish. "Forgive me, my lord. I was not myself." He took a faltering step forward, then fell to his knees. "The potion will neutralize the crystals. Please." Ayame didn't lower her guard. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I am fighting it even now," Sekiya gasped, his eyes flickering between their normal brown and an unnatural yellow. "Onikaji's possession is not complete. The part of me that has served Lord Goda for 30 years still remains." He extended the vial toward them, his hand shaking violently. "I cannot resist much longer. The binding spell grows stronger as the blood moon rises." Lord Goda moved toward his advisor, but Ayame blocked his path. "My lord, it could be another trap." "If I wished you dead," Sekiya said with sudden clarity, "I would only need to wait. When the gateway opens, all within the castle will perish anyway." His eyes flickered yellow again, and he cried out in pain, clutching his head. "Take it, quickly," he gasped. Lord Goda made the decision, stepping around Ayame to take the vial from Sekiya's hand. "I have trusted this man with my life for 3 decades, he said quietly. "I choose to trust him now." Sekiya looked up, tears streaming down his lined face. "Thank you, my lord. Now go. Go far from here. I can feel them coming." "Who is coming?" Ayame demanded. As if in answer, shouts erupted from the courtyard below. Ayame rushed to the window to see guards engaged in combat with shadowy figures that moved with inhuman speed. More of Lady Kagami's puppets, dozens of them, scaling the castle walls. "They come for the princess," Sekiya said, struggling to his feet. "The proxy is damaged. Lady Kagami needs the true vessel now." Lord Goda handed the vial to Ayame. "Do what you must for my daughter. I will hold them off as long as possible." "My lord, you cannot," she began. "I am still the lord of this province," Goda interrupted, drawing his sword. The sacred blade passed down through his family for generations. "And I will defend what is mine." The sounds of fighting grew closer. Ayame knew they had minutes at most before the attackers reached the princess's chamber. "Sekiya," Lord Goda commanded, "if you truly wish to atone, help me defend this doorway." The advisor bowed deeply. "Until my last breath, my lord." As the 2 men took positions at the chamber entrance, Ayame returned to Princess Kiku and the proxy doll. Carefully uncorking the vial, she found that it contained a liquid that shimmered like quicksilver. Working swiftly, she applied a drop to the crystal at the doll's forehead. The red light within it immediately dimmed, turning blue before fading entirely. Above them, Princess Kiku's body shuddered, the barrier around her fluctuating. Encouraged, Ayame moved to the crystals at the doll's hands. Each drop of the potion produced the same effect, the red glow fading to blue, then darkness. With each crystal neutralized, Princess Kiku's body lowered slightly toward her futon, the barrier weakening. From the doorway came the sounds of combat, Lord Goda and Sakia engaging the first wave of attackers. Ayame worked faster, applying the potion to the fourth crystal. Only one remained. A scream of pain made her look up. Sakia had fallen, a black blade protruding from his chest. His eyes, clear and brown in his final moments, met Ayame's across the chamber. "Complete it," he gasped before his body went limp. Lord Goda fought with the skill that had made him a renowned warrior in his youth, but he was being driven back step by step. 3 of the shadow puppets already lay destroyed at his feet, but more pressed forward. Ayame turned back to her task, applying the last drop of potion to the final crystal in the doll's left foot. As the red light faded, the barrier around Kiku shattered like glass, the fragments dissolving into the air. The princess's body settled gently onto her bed, her breathing shallow but steady. "It's done," Ayame breathed, moving to defend the unconscious princess. Lord Goda, bleeding from several wounds, fought with renewed determination. "Get my daughter to safety. There is a hidden passage behind the central panel." Before she could respond, a new figure appeared behind the shadow puppets. Minister Hamada, clutching the cursed sword she had seen earlier. His eyes blazed with yellow light, his face contorted in a rictus of hate. "The vessel will fulfill her purpose," he snarled in a voice that echoed with Onikage's distinctive rasp. "Lady Kagami awaits at the temple." With inhuman strength, he struck down 2 of his own shadow puppets to clear a path toward Lord Goda. Their blades met with a shower of sparks, the cursed sword leaving a trail of darkness in the air as it moved. "You were like a brother to me," Lord Goda said, parrying a vicious strike. "Why, Hamada? What could drive you to this betrayal?" "Power," Hamada replied, though the voice remained a disturbing blend of his own and Onikage's. "Your bloodline has ruled for generations, while more worthy men served in their shadow. No more." Ayame gathered the unconscious princess in her arms, searching for the hidden panel Lord Goda had mentioned. Finding a slight seam in the wall, she pressed against it, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "My lord," she called, "we must go now." Lord Goda, realizing he could not win against Hamada's supernaturally enhanced strength, executed a desperate maneuver, allowing the cursed blade to graze his side in exchange for delivering a deep cut across Hamada's sword arm. The minister howled in pain, momentarily dropping his guard. Goda used the opening to retreat toward Ayame and the secret passage, blood flowing freely from his wound. "It will lead you to the Eastern Guardhouse," he gasped, pushing Ayame and his daughter toward the opening. "From there, the forest path to the temple." His words were cut short as Hamada's blade erupted from his chest from behind. The Lord's eyes widened in shock and pain. "No!" Ayame gasped as Lord Goda collapsed forward. Hamada stood behind him, the cursed sword dripping with the Lord's blood, his face twisted in triumph. "The Goda line ends tonight," he declared. "The princess will not escape." With the last of his strength, Lord Goda pushed Ayame and Princess Kiku fully into the passage and slammed his palm against a mechanism inside the wall. A heavy wooden panel began to slide closed. "Save her," he whispered, his eyes meeting Ayame's one final time. "Save them all." The panel sealed shut just as Hamada lunged forward, his cursed blade striking harmlessly against solid wood. His roar of frustration followed Ayame as she carried the princess down the narrow, dark passage, tears streaming down her face. Lord Goda had given his life to save his daughter. Now it fell to Ayame to ensure that sacrifice was not in vain. Kiku stirred in her arms, eyelids fluttering weakly. "Father," she whispered. Ayame couldn't bring herself to answer as she hurried through the passage, the sounds of pursuit growing behind them. Hamada would find a way to enter the passage soon enough. The tunnel emerged, as Lord Goda had said, near the Eastern Guardhouse. The structure stood empty, its guards presumably either dead or engaged in the chaotic battle that now consumed the castle grounds. In the distance, Goda Castle burned against the blood-red moon, black smoke rising in columns. Ayame set the princess down momentarily, checking the surroundings. The path to the temple of the sleeping dragon lay through the forest beyond the eastern wall, the same direction Rikimaru had taken earlier. "Can you walk?" Ayame asked gently. Princess Kiku, still weak but increasingly aware, nodded shakily. "What's happening? Where is my father?" The pain in Ayame's chest tightened. There would be time for grief later, if they survived the night. "Your father has given us a chance to save you and the province," she said, helping the princess to her feet. "We must reach the temple of the sleeping dragon, where Rikimaru confronts those responsible." Understanding dawned in the princess's eyes, followed by determination that reminded her of Lord Goda himself. "Then we must not waste his sacrifice." As they moved toward the forest path, a rumbling sound drew their attention skyward. Above the castle, the blood moon had taken on an impossible appearance. A swirling vortex had formed at its center, reaching downward like a malevolent finger toward the temple in the northern mountains. "The gateway begins to open," Ayame realized with horror. "Rikimaru may already be too late." Princess Kiku straightened, summoning strength from some hidden reserve. "Then we must hurry. The Azuma have protected my family for generations. Now I will stand with you to protect our land." Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Hamada had found the passage. Before them lay the treacherous mountain path to the temple, where Lady Kagami performed her dark ritual, and Onikaja's return grew closer by the minute. And somewhere ahead, Rikimaru fought alone against forces that threatened to overwhelm them all. The temple of the sleeping dragon loomed against the crimson moon, its ancient stone edifice transformed by Lady Kagami's sorcery. What had once been a sacred place of meditation now pulsed with malevolent energy. Black veins of power crawled across the temple walls like corrupt ivy, converging at the central pagoda, where a beam of red light connected the structure to the vortex forming in the sky. Rikimaru approached from the western ridge, having abandoned his horse when the terrain became too treacherous. The temple grounds were heavily guarded. Acolytes in blue robes patrolled in precise patterns, while shadow puppets stood motionless at strategic points, their featureless faces turned toward the surrounding forest. From his concealed position, Rikimaru studied the temple's layout. The main approach was impossible, too exposed, too well defended. The eastern wall had partially collapsed in a landslide years ago, but Lady Kagami had positioned her strongest forces there, anticipating an assault from that direction. The roof, however, offered possibility. The ancient tiles, slick with the same black rain that had fallen on Goda Castle, would be treacherous, but navigable for one with his training. If he could reach the central chamber from above, he might be able to interrupt the ritual before the gateway fully opened. Movement in the underbrush to his left caught Rikimaru's attention. He turned, sword half drawn, only to find Tenchu emerging from the shadows. His clothing was torn and bloodied, one arm hanging uselessly at his side. "The east approach is compromised," Tenchu reported quietly, joining him in the shadows. "Lady Kagami anticipated our movements." "What of the ritual?" Rikimaru asked. "Already begun," he confirmed grimly. "The sorceress has created a gateway between realms using artifacts from the temple's sealed vault. Ancient texts on boundary manipulation, tools crafted specifically to pierce the veil between worlds." "And Onikage?" Tenchu's expression darkened. "I glimpsed the central chamber briefly. A form is taking shape within the gateway, not fully materialized but growing stronger by the minute. If the ritual completes." He left the implications unspoken. Both men knew what Onikage's return would mean, not just for Lord Goda's province, but for all of Japan. "We cannot wait," Rikimaru decided. "I will enter through the roof of the central pagoda. You circle to the rear courtyard. There's a meditation garden that should provide cover to approach the support structures. If you can destroy the ward stones I saw positioned there, it may weaken the ritual's containment." The pair separated with a nod. Tenchu melted back into the forest, circling toward the rear of the temple, while Rikimaru began his approach toward the western wall. Using his grappling hook, he scaled the cliff with practiced ease. At the top of the peak, Rikimaru paused to survey the temple grounds from his elevated position. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Lady Kagami had transformed the sacred site into a perfect channel for otherworldly energies. Moving silently across the temple's outer wall, Rikimaru made his way toward the central pagoda. Twice, he was forced to freeze in place as acolytes passed below, their chanting creating ripples in the dark energy that permeated the grounds. Once, a shadow puppet looked directly at his position, its featureless face turning upward as if sensing his presence. but after a moment it resumed its patrol. The roof of the central pagoda proved as treacherous as anticipated. The black substance coating the tiles was not rain, but something more viscous, like oil infused with living shadow. It retreated from Izayoi's blessed steel as Rikimaru used the blade to secure his footing. At the apex of the roof, a circular skylight offered a view into the ritual chamber below. The glass had been removed, leaving a perfect opening surrounded by ornate carvings that now pulsed with the same corrupt energy that infected the rest of the temple. He positioned himself above the opening, peering down into the heart of Lady Kagami's dark work. The chamber below had once been the temple's main meditation hall. Now it was unrecognizable. The wooden floor had been torn up to expose the earth beneath, which had been formed into a perfect circle inscribed with symbols that burned with an inner light. At 5 points around this circle stood obsidian pillars, each connected to one of the external sites by a beam of crimson energy. In the center of the circle stood Lady Kagami, her arms raised toward the opening in the roof, chanting in a strange tongue. Her white painted face was now streaked with black veins, her eyes entirely yellow, with vertical pupils like a snake's. But it was what floated above her that froze Rikimaru's blood. A tear in reality itself hovered in the air, a jagged rip in the fabric of the world through which something was emerging. A form composed of shadow and malice, taking shape with each word of Lady Kagami's chant. Though not yet fully materialized, the shape was unmistakable, Onikage's distinctive silhouette growing more solid by the moment. At the edge of the circle, Minister Hamada had just entered the chamber, his cursed sword dripping with fresh blood. The minister's face was contorted in a mixture of triumph and terror. "The Lord is dead," Hamada announced, kneeling at the edge of the circle. "But the princess escaped with the kunoichi. They head this way even now." Lady Kagami's chanting faltered momentarily. "Fool," she hissed, her voice echoing unnaturally. "The ritual requires completion. Without the royal blood, Onikage's return will be incomplete, a shadow of his true power." "The Azuma disrupted the connection," Hamada explained, cowering before Lady Kagami's wrath. "But the princess lives. When we capture her—" "There's no time," she snarled. "The celestial alignment peaks within minutes. We must complete the ritual now." Kagami turned to a small altar at the edge of the circle where various ceremonial items had been arranged: daggers, scrolls, and vials of dark liquid. Selecting a curved knife with a jade handle, she approached Hamada. "You have served your purpose, Minister," she said, her voice suddenly gentle. "Now you shall serve one final time." Understanding dawned in Hamada's eyes, too late. Lady Kagami moved with inhuman speed, the ceremonial dagger plunging into his chest. Hamada screamed as dark energy coursed through his body. His skin began to blacken and crack, golden light spilling from the fissures. Your ambition, your jealousy, your decades of resentment toward the Goda line. Such exquisite darkness, Lady Kagami whispered. Not royal blood, but powerful nonetheless. Rikimaru had seen enough. Drawing Izayoi, he prepared to drop through the skylight and end the ritual with one decisive strike. But before he could move, the partially formed Onikage within the gateway turned its head, impossible as that should have been, and looked directly up at him. A voice like stone grinding against stone echoed not in the chamber, but in Rikimaru's mind. The dragon descends. Welcome, old friend. Lady Kagami's head snapped upward, her yellow eyes widening at the sight of Rikimaru poised above. With a gesture, she sent a wave of force toward the roof that shook the entire structure. Left with no choice, Rikimaru leapt through the opening, blade aimed toward Lady Kagami. The sorceress raised her blood-covered hand, creating a shield of dark energy that deflected his strike. The impact sent Rikimaru rolling across the inscribed floor, dangerously close to the gateway where Onikage continued to materialize. Perfect timing. Lady Kagami laughed, her voice distorted by the power flowing through her. The blood of an Azuma ninja will serve as well as royal blood. Poetic, is it not? The very one who sent Onikage to the Shadow Realm shall be the key to his return. Hamada's body had begun to dissolve, the dark energy consuming him from within. His screams faded as his physical form broke down into pure energy that flowed into the gateway, strengthening Onikage's materializing form. Rikimaru regained his footing, Izayoi glowing brilliantly in response to the dark energies surrounding him. Your ritual ends here, sorceress. Kagami smiled, revealing teeth that had sharpened into fangs. The ritual is self-sustaining now. Even if you strike me down, the gateway will complete its opening. She gestured to the partially formed figure within the tear. Your old enemy returns, Dragon of the Azuma. Will you not greet him properly? From the gateway, Onikage's voice emerged, still disembodied, but growing stronger. Rikimaru, how I have waited for this moment. The Shadow Realm taught me much about pain, about eternity, lessons I will share with you and all you protect. Rikimaru lunged toward the sorceress, Izayoi cutting through her protective barrier with its blessed steel. The sorceress hissed in pain as the blade sliced across her arm, revealing not blood, but the same black, writhing substance he had glimpsed earlier. You cannot kill what is already dead, she laughed, her injured arm reforming before his eyes. My physical form perished with Tenrai. What stands before you is merely a vessel, sustained by Onikage's power. A disturbance at the chamber's main entrance drew their attention. Tenchu had arrived, engaging 3 acolytes in desperate combat. Behind him, the ward stones Rikimaru had spotted earlier lay shattered, their energy dissipating into the air. The containment is weakened, Kagami shrieked, genuine alarm in her voice for the first time. The gateway must be stabilized. She abandoned her confrontation with Rikimaru, rushing back to the center of the circle to resume her chant. The partially formed Onikage within the gateway pulsed with renewed energy, reaching one shadowy arm through the tear in reality. Rikimaru pressed his advantage, closing the distance to strike at Lady Kagami again. This time, his blade met solid resistance as Onikage's extended arm intercepted the blow, catching Izayoi mid-strike. Not yet, dragon, Onikaga's voice rumbled. Our reunion deserves proper attention. The grip on Izayoi tightened, dark energy crackling down the blade toward Rikimaru's hands. With a surge of effort, he channeled his own spiritual energy into the sacred sword, creating a flash of purifying light that forced the demon to release his hold. Staggering backward, he assessed the situation. The ritual had progressed too far for a direct assault to succeed. Lady Kagami's chanting had reached a fever pitch, the symbols on the floor burning brighter with each syllable. The gateway expanded with each passing moment, the tear in reality widening to accommodate Onikaga's increasingly solid form. A plan formed in Rikimaru's mind, desperate, perhaps suicidal, but possibly their only hope. The ritual drew power from the 5 external sights, channeled through the obsidian pillars in the chamber. If those connections could be severed simultaneously. As if reading his thoughts, Tenchu called out from the doorway, having dispatched the last of the acolytes. The pillars, Rikimaru, they're the anchors. Lady Kagami screamed in rage, gesturing toward Tenchu. A bolt of dark lightning struck, sending him crashing against the wall. He slumped to the floor, conscious but unable to move, as black energy coursed over his body, pinning him in place. Your interference ends now, the sorceress declared. Witness the return of your greatest enemy, helpless to prevent it. The gateway had expanded to nearly fill the center of the circle. Onikaga's form had solidified to the point where his features were clearly visible. The demonic face that had haunted Rikimaru's nightmares since childhood, the yellow eyes that had watched Master Shiunsai die, the clawed hands that had ended countless lives. Rikimaru knew he had seconds to act. 5 pillars, too far apart to destroy quickly enough by conventional means. But there was one technique, only meant to be used in the direst circumstances, for its cost to the wielder was severe. The heavenly dragon strike, Rikimaru whispered, assuming a stance Master Shiunsai had taught him in his final year of training. Recognition flashed in Kagami's eyes. Futile effort, she mocked. The pillars are warded against physical attack. But it was not a physical technique. Closing his eyes, Rikimaru centered himself in perfect stillness, then channeled all his spiritual energy into Izayoi. The sacred blade began to glow with blinding intensity, responding to his will and the purity of his purpose. In one perfect motion that seemed to bend time itself, Rikimaru executed 5 strikes so rapidly that they appeared simultaneous, each one sending a wave of purifying energy toward one of the obsidian pillars. The wards flared in resistance, but Izayoi's blessed energy cut through them like sunlight through darkness. All 5 pillars shattered in the same instant. The beams of crimson energy connecting them to the external sights flickered and died. The gateway, suddenly deprived of its power source, began to collapse inward. No! Kagami snarled, abandoning her chant to lunge toward Rikimaru. "What have you done?" Onikage's partially materialized form began to distort as the gateway destabilized. "This changes nothing, dragon," his voice boomed, now tinged with desperation. "I will return. The shadows always find a way." The sorceress reached Rikimaru just as he completed the technique, her clawed hands closing around his throat. The price of the heavenly dragon strike made itself known immediately. His limbs felt leaden, his spiritual energy completely depleted, leaving him defenseless against her attack. "You have disrupted the ritual, but not destroyed it," Kagami hissed, her face inches from his. "The gateway remains. With your death, we begin anew." Before she could deliver a killing blow, a throwing knife embedded itself in her back. Lady Kagami arched in pain, releasing her grip on Rikimaru. In the doorway stood Ayame, another knife ready in her hand. Beside her, supporting herself against the wall, stood Princess Kiku. "The vessel returns of her own accord," Kagami mocked, recovering quickly from Ayame's attack. "The ritual may yet be completed." The destabilized gateway pulsed erratically behind her. The demon fluctuated between solidity and shadow. With each pulse, the tear in reality expanded and contracted unpredictably, releasing waves of dark energy that cracked the temple's stone floors and walls. "Ayame, get the princess out," Rikimaru commanded, struggling to regain his strength. "The gateway is collapsing. The entire temple will follow." "Too late," Kagami cooed, her voice eerily calm as she turned toward the princess. Her royal blood must be drained. She moved with preternatural speed, the ceremonial dagger still clutched in her hand. Ayame intercepted her, twin blades flashing in the crimson light, but the sorceress knocked her aside with supernatural strength. Rikimaru, still weakened from the heavenly dragon strike, could not intercept her in time. It was Tenchu, breaking free from the energy binding him through sheer will, who made the desperate lunge that placed himself between the princess and Kagami's blade. The ceremonial dagger plunged into his chest. Tenchu grabbed Kagami's wrist, holding her in place as his blood spilled onto the floor. "Blood freely given," he gasped, "not taken by force. That changes everything." The symbols beneath them flared with unexpected light, not the corrupt red of before, but a purifying white that spread outward in a wave. Where it touched the inscriptions, they changed, transforming from Lady Kagami's dark sorcery to something older and more powerful. The light reached the gateway, engulfing it completely. Onikage's partially formed body began to dissolve, drawn back into the shadow realm as the tear in reality began to seal itself. "This is not the end, dragon," Onikage's voice echoed as his form retreated. "I will return." Lady Kagami, realizing her ritual was irreversibly corrupted, made one last desperate attempt. Tearing free from Tenchu's weakening grip, she lunged toward the closing gateway. "I'm sorry, Master." The demon's shadowy hand extended through the narrowing tear, but not in welcome. Instead, it closed around her throat. "Failure has its price, sorceress. His voice rumbled as he dragged her screaming form into the shadow realm with him. The gateway collapsed with a thunderous implosion that shook the entire temple. The obsidian shards, the inscribed floor, the corrupted altar, all disintegrated into dust. Where the tear in reality had been, only empty air remained, though Rikimaru's trained senses could detect the faintest scar in the spiritual fabric of the world, a wound that would take time to fully heal. Ayame rushed to Teshu's side, but it was clear from his peaceful expression that he had already departed. Princess Kiku knelt beside them, tears streaming down her face as she placed a gentle hand on Teshu's forehead. "He saved me," she whispered. The temple around them groaned ominously, stone cracking as the corrupting energy that had sustained the structure dissipated. Without Kagami's sorcery holding it together, the ancient building was quickly becoming unstable. "We must leave," Rikimaru said, forcing himself to his feet. "The temple is collapsing." Ayame helped Princess Kiku up, while Rikimaru lifted Teshu's body. They would not leave their fallen comrade behind. As they made their way out of the crumbling temple, the blood moon above began to fade, returning to a natural silver. The black rain stopped, and the unnatural silence that had fallen over the land lifted. Rikimaru paused at the temple entrance, looking back at the chamber where his nemesis had nearly returned. The scar in reality remained, faint but perceptible to his trained senses. Onikage's final words echoed in his mind. "I will return." This victory had come at terrible cost. Lord Goda, Teshu, countless guards, and innocent citizens, all sacrificed to stop the demon from returning. And yet, Rikimaru knew with cold certainty that it was not truly over. The Shadow Realm existed beyond time as mortals understood it. Onikage's threat was not idle boasting, but a promise that would one day need to be confronted. Three days later, Rikimaru knelt before the funeral pyre where Lord Goda's body had been laid to rest with full ceremonial honors. The flames reached toward the heavens, carrying the spirit of a man who had ruled with wisdom and compassion for over 2 decades. Beside the main pyre, smaller fires honored the others who had fallen: Teshu, Sekiya, and the many guards who had died defending their lord and province. Princess Kiku, now Lady Goda in her own right, stood nearby, dressed in white mourning robes, her face composed despite the grief that Rikimaru knew consumed her. In 3 days, she had transformed from a sheltered young woman into a ruler of necessity, addressing her father's council with a quiet authority that silenced even the most ambitious advisors who might have seen opportunity in the transition. From his position slightly behind Lady Kiku, Rikimaru surveyed the assembled mourners. Most were genuinely grieving, but some watched the new lady with calculating eyes, measuring her youth and inexperience against their own ambitions. The shadows of political intrigue never disappeared completely, even in times of tragedy. "My father always said that true strength lies not in the sword, but in knowing when to sheathe it," Lady Kiku said softly, sensing Rikimaru's vigilance without turning. He also said the Azuma were his strength when his own faltered. "We remain in your service, my lady," he assured, "as we served your father and his father before him." Lady Kiku nodded. The council presses for answers about what happened. They demand to know how Minister Hamada, a trusted advisor for 15 years, could betray us so completely. "Some questions have no satisfying answers," Rikimaru whispered. "Hamada's ambition made him vulnerable to Onikage's influence. Perhaps he believed he would rule once your father was removed. In the end, he was merely another tool, discarded when no longer useful." The funeral flames reflected in Lady Kiku's eyes as she watched her father's pyre. "And Onikage? Is he truly gone?" Rikimaru hesitated. "The gateway is closed, but the scar remains. Onikage was not destroyed, merely contained once more in the Shadow Realm. Then he may return one day," she said, her voice steady despite the implication. "Yes, but not soon and not easily. The ritual required specific conditions that took years to arrange. We will be vigilant." Lady Kiku turned slightly, meeting his gaze directly. "My father often spoke of the burden of rule, how each decision carries weight beyond its immediate consequence. I understand that burden better now." Her eyes moved to where Ayame stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the assembled nobles with barely concealed suspicion. The kunoichi had refused formal recognition for her role in saving the province, preferring to remain in the shadows where she operated best. "The Azuma serve from darkness so that others may walk in light," Lady Kiku said, reciting the clan's oath. "My father explained this to me when I was a child. I did not truly understand until now." The funeral pyre collapsed inward as Lord Goda's body was consumed by the sacred flames. A collective murmur rose from the assembled mourners, a traditional prayer for the departed's journey to the next world. Lady Kiku joined her voice to theirs, performing her duties as both daughter and ruler with perfect grace. When the ceremony concluded, the nobles and officials filed past Lady Kiku, offering condolences and pledges of loyalty. Rikimaru noted each face, each nuance of expression and tone, cataloguing potential threats for future reference. 3 council members in particular spoke with excessive enthusiasm about guiding the young lady through these difficult transitions, their ambitions barely concealed beneath formal propriety. As twilight approached and the gathering dispersed, Kiku signaled for Rikimaru and Ayame to follow her to a private garden where her father had often meditated. Away from the political performance required of her, she allowed her shoulders to slump slightly, the weight of her grief and new responsibilities momentarily visible. "The council has appointed new ministers to replace Hamada and Sekiya," she said, seating herself beside a small ornamental pond. "Men of good reputation by all accounts, but my father always said, reputation is the mask one shows to the world, not the face beneath. Masks can be torn away when necessary," Ayame noted. Lady Kiku smiled faintly at the barely veiled suggestion. "Indeed. Which brings me to the matter at hand." She straightened, once again the ruler rather than the grieving daughter. The official record will state that Minister Hamada led a failed coup attempt, motivated by political ambition. He died in the attempt, along with his conspirators. There will be no mention of sorcery, shadow realms, or ancient rituals. A wise decision, Rikimaru nodded. The truth would only create unnecessary fear and invite questions that cannot be answered. However, Kiku continued, I require the unofficial truth from both of you. What must be done to ensure Onikage remains trapped in the Shadow Realm? What weaknesses must be guarded against? The two Azumas exchanged glances, a silent communication born of years fighting alongside each other. Ayame nodded slightly, deferring to Rikimaru's greater knowledge of their nemesis. The scar between realms at the Temple of the Sleeping Dragon must be monitored. Rikimaru began. I recommend stationing trusted men there under the guise of honoring those who fell. Any unusual activity, spiritual disturbances, unexplained deaths, even changes in local wildlife behavior should be reported immediately. The artifacts from Hamada's collection must be secured or destroyed, Ayame added. Many still contain corrupted energy that could be harnessed by others with knowledge of blood sorcery. Kiku listened intently, her expression grave. And what of Lady Kagami? Could she return as well? The sorceress was pulled into the Shadow Realm by Onikage himself, Rikimaru explained. Her fate there. He hesitated, unwilling to describe what awaited those who failed the Demon Lord. She will not trouble us again. Unless Onikage uses her as he used Hamada, Ayame pointed out. A vessel for his influence. Lady Kiku absorbed this information silently, her gaze fixed on the reflection of the evening stars in the pond's still water. My father once told me that ruling is not about eliminating threats, but about recognizing which ones require immediate action and which can be monitored from a distance. She looked up at the two ninjas who'd saved her life and her province. The Azuma have always been the shadows that protect the Goda line. I ask now that you continue this sacred duty, not just for me, but for all who live under our protection. Rikimaru knelt formally, head bowed. Until death releases me from service, my lady. Ayame followed suit, though with less ceremony. The Azuma remain your shadow, Lady Goda. Then rise, she commanded, and hear my first directive as ruler of this province. The pair stood, awaiting her command. You will establish a network of informants throughout the province, not just in the capital, but in every village and town. Any sign of unnatural occurrences, any whisper of sorcery or demonic influence must be investigated immediately. It shall be done, Rikimaru affirmed. Additionally, she continued, I want the temple archives searched for any information regarding the Shadow Realm and methods to permanently seal the barriers between worlds. If Onikage found one way to return, he would seek others. We must be prepared. Ayame nodded. I know someone in the capital with access to restricted scrolls from the Imperial collection. Information thought lost may still exist in forgotten corners. Good, Lady Kiku said. She hesitated, then added in a softer voice, There is one more matter, a personal request. My lady, Rikimaru prompted when she fell silent. Teach me, she said simply. not to become a ninja. That is not my path. But to understand what you face, to recognize the signs of corruption that my father missed in Hamada. A ruler who remains ignorant of the shadows becomes their victim. The request surprised them both. Traditionally, the Godar line maintained a careful separation from the Azuma's methods, preserving deniability and the moral distance between lord and assassin. After a moment's consideration, Rikimaru inclined his head. Not all knowledge of the shadows requires walking within them. There are awareness techniques that would serve your purpose without compromising your position. You will have what you need to rule wisely, Ayame added, just as your father did. Lady Kiku rose, signaling the end of their private council. Then we begin tomorrow. Tonight, I must appear at the formal reception for the provincial lords who have come to pay respects. As she turned to leave, she paused. My father never spoke of his fear, though I know he must have felt it deeply at times. Is it a weakness to acknowledge such things? Fear is neither weakness nor strength, Rikimaru answered. It is merely information, the body and spirit warning of danger. A blade feels no fear and cannot adjust to unexpected threats. The warrior who acknowledges fear without being ruled by it holds the advantage. Lady Kiku considered this, then nodded. Thank you, both of you. After she had gone, Rikimaru and Ayame remained in the garden, watching as the first stars appeared in the evening sky. She will make a worthy ruler, Ayame observed, perhaps greater than her father, in time. If she survives the coming months, he replied. Not all dangers announce themselves with thunder and sorcery. The council has ambitious men who may see her youth as opportunity. Ayame's hand moved to her blades, a gesture both unconscious and telling. Then they will learn what happens to those who threaten the Godar line. Rikimaru gazed toward the northern mountains, where the temple of the sleeping dragon stood silent and empty, its dark secret known only to those who had witnessed the final confrontation. The scar between worlds remained, a promise of conflicts yet to come. Onikage will try again, he said quietly. If not in our lifetime, then in the next generations. The Shadow Realm operates beyond mortal time. Then we prepare the next generation to face him, Ayame replied with simple certainty. The Azuma endure, as they always have. As darkness settled fully over Goda Castle, the two ninja vanished from the garden, returning to the shadows that were both their home and their destiny.